Well, thank you to all of our speakers. Yes, we'll have to squeeze in on the couch here, get friendly a little bit.
Thank you.
So we had 3 different presentations that all sort of touched on in similar but different ways, driving quality and programmatic, from focusing on the supply side of the chain to auditing the data identity processes and validating location-based information, et cetera. One question that actually came in that's probably relevant for all of you, so we'll see how this one goes, but the question came in essentially said, wouldn't ad effectiveness measurement, focusing on ad effectiveness, be a better way to ferret out fraud from the ecosystem rather than worrying about all this other stuff? Can we just rely on ad effectiveness measurements to root out fraud?
But ad effectiveness, like I work with ad effectiveness research for the last, almost 2 decades. What's the question? Is it about the survey that verifies the effectiveness, the modeling? I'm not sure if...
The context isn't there, but it appears to be focused on sort of outcome-based measurements or determining ultimately, for example, if you're buying a lot of fraud, then that shouldn't perform, right? So if we can measure the effectiveness of the campaign, can we sort of step around dealing with a lot of these quality focuses?
Yeah. But then the performance of the ad depends on other things. I mean, delivering is one thing, but there are other things that make sure that the effects are seen. In quality of the ad, delivered to the right demographics. So I think it's ineffective.
Yeah, for direct response, situation, that's what they do today. So I guess that's okay. But there are a lot of companies that are not direct response advertisers, and so the farther you get into pure branding, that type of ad effectiveness research isn't perfect either. So, I think it takes a mix of a lot of different things, and marketers are going to do their ad effectiveness, but they also want to make sure that the money up front is being spent in the right way.
Well, and I think if go on.
No, yes, I mean, there's a trend towards performance indicators, even for TV with addressable TV, but I think we shouldn't confuse everything. I mean, there are the exposure or delivery KPIs and then the effectiveness. And it's important to measure exposure as well, especially if you want to compare media.
Well, in a way, this was actually our topic for the Creativity Awards, is the pre-bid that helps you to evaluate the programmatic inventory right up front. So you know what you're bidding. You can still bid on the different levels of the algorithm. You don't have to go 80 or 90% accurate. You can go lower. But that's the choice that you're going to have. And I think that will kind of drive the results of the effectiveness at the end. But going there, being aware of what you're doing, it's a big step forward.
All right, we also have a question specifically for our Emodo and Axonix team. With the shift to 5G that you're outlining, will there be a change in the identifiers that are ultimately going to be used that in the measurement processes that companies will have to adapt to?
Do you want to take that?
That's a very good question, and I think the whole issue around identifiers as it stands at the moment is all up in the air in terms of cookies and advertising IDs. I think that what will really change is the way we create audiences. So the speed and the latency and how quickly we have to deliver audiences and data is going to be, a lot of computing will be done at an edge level rather than querying kind of centralized databases for first-party data. So I feel that what will happen is we will lean more on predictive outcomes, and it could well be a case that in the future we will just, and we're seeing in the UK sort of audiences, a bit like when we first sold our deterministic campaigns, we will find audiences and we will have to, sell those as audiences with sort of the trust, with verified sort of solutions that engender trust that people believe in those audiences, and it is just an audience-based solution that's kind of working in that respect.
Yeah, and in a way, because you're going to have so many touch points, so much more data, the data science is going to be so much more intelligent to predict, and actually is going to be able to predict much better than currently. And more so, there won't be any time, in a way, for going to the database and finding the deterministic match. You will just predict in real seconds. So the probabilistic modeling will take another spin and another level of precision.
There is another question is, who is responsible for the efficiency in general for that fraud?
Efficiency for?
Efficiency.
They're asking about should be responsible for the ability or for that fraud, the campaign, the advertisers or the agency or the publisher?
Definitely not the telco.
I think it relies more on the, I think all three, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's everybody. So, you know, you've got good publishers with good practice today, and you can't separate them from, you know, bad publishers and the fake sites. So, you know, good publishers should get credit. More money should be directed to those companies, and that'll make the publishing environment better and the advertising environment better. Agencies need to help their clients understand this. As I said, we need, you know, lots of different layers of solutions that don't not necessarily cost a lot, but we gotta, you know, take bites out of the elephant one bite at a time. But many different companies doing that. And at the end of the day, it's also the advertiser. I mean, the advertiser can't, you know, put their head in the sand either about what's going on with their investments, because sometimes it's not in somebody's best interest to tell your boss that you've been spending, you know, 20 or 30% of your budget on ad fraud. So everybody, you know, I think there's been an enlightenment in the last few years about this situation, but you know, there are a lot of different initiatives that are in place. None of them are perfect, but they do overlap, and they layer on the solution. And so we need, you know, we need the publishers to adopt the solutions. We need the agencies to adopt the solutions, and we need the marketers really to push everybody to do that.
All right, for Valerie, related to the ranking of the CRM databases, the question is the ranking of the CRM data sources applied at the data attribute level or overall, meaning a full data source? So I think that means
Yes,
like...
it's the full data source, yeah.
And is there advantage to one over the other?
Well, we've only conducted this audit on gravity, so as we gain more experience, we'll see what's best, yeah.
Another one for Emodo and Axonix. Will the carriers be able to differentiate real devices from Android emulators, et cetera, running through proxies?
Well, it's part of the filtering and the data science and the mechanisms. That's almost kind of what this product is centered around. You know, if we look at what we need for verification, we are specifically, you know, looking to root out three things. You know, one is kind of your location, just good location accuracy, gaming of location, but also by looking at, you know, device activity. So if you were at the Creativity Awards a couple of days back, Stefan was talking about using neural networking and, you know, algorithms to actually kind of understand our devices being sort of spoofed. You know, are we seeing users multiple times and this kind of stuff? So, and my sense would be that, yeah, that would also encompass not just the hardcore devices, but the devices in the cloud as well.
Yeah, and I can just add to that because I was part of the Creativity Awards. So the carrier database, because of that scale, it's our largest true set of valid devices and valid users. And Sivan, who's somewhere there in the audience, whoever wants to like reach out to me, will introduce you to her. She can explain how that actually is the foundation of the model to find the spoof IDs and users with valid devices, but also valid users with invalid devices.
And I think, given our time, our last question then will be for Pedro and Tom. With the slide where you were presenting the concept of some of the large advertisers scaling down to small groups of trusted inventory, how can smaller legitimate publishers stay relevant and continue to trade as the advertisers reduce their willingness to spend in the longer tail.
Yeah, well, actually have a lot of push on us for us to audit the long tail. Agencies are pushing us to do this because they need to have those, need to have that reach beyond the large publishers that they know well. So I think, we have that marketplace pressure to do that, and the small publishers should be able, the good ones should be able to thrive through the future.
Well, thanks, everyone. We are very, very happy to have all of these panelists up here today, guys. You did great. We appreciate you.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.